Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maverick Mystic Arts podcast. Today we'll be continuing with step 10 of FRANZ BARDON's initiation into Hermetics. And we'll be looking at what we'll be starting with today. Essentially loading a room as we did earlier in the training, but this time we'll be loading a room from a distance. So this gets into distance work of really any kind. Now, the trick with distance, because distance becomes irrelevant, is how to get there. And so BARDON offers different techniques. Of course, the Akasha is the simplest way to make that transition. And you go into that space of spacelessness. You go into the space of spacelessness. You dissolve that space barrier, and that'll take you right there. You can also use just the mental wandering can work as well, though typically not as effective as the Akasha, especially when you're bringing in other energies through that connection. Okay, so if you're in person somewhere, it's it's a lot more simple. Whatever space you're in, if it's a room, your mind will inhabit the space, if you allow it to, inhabit the space of the room, right? And we can look at like subconscious energetic type of relationships as well. If you're in a very, very confined space, right, that pressure, it might even be sheer air pressure in relation to your body. If you can feel that compression, and when you move out into a bigger space, you can feel the release that occurs, right? So this is something to note and pay attention to when it comes to clairsentient type of experiences, and refining your senses is what you pick up through that sense of touch. Right? Now, of course, there's the mind itself, the mind space, or the space the mind occupies, which will expand to fill a room, right? Whether it's large or small. It'll take on that shape as well. So, if we allow it to, of course. And the more flexible the mind is, the more shapes it can take on, and the easier it can be for the mind to shift between inhabiting a small space and inhabiting a large space, which is very important. Now, when you are working with coarser energy, that also is something that's easier to perceive when you're there, right? So there can be a tricky thing here when it comes to, let's say, you want to do like a long distance healing type of situation, and you end up, just frying your phone or whatever you're recording on, or communicating with, or whether you are working with the person on the other end. And this comes down to connection, right? And if you know someone, it can be much easier, okay? But when you start becoming very familiar and comfortable with, say, the Akasha, you can connect to somebody through that space in the Akasha. The phone is irrelevant, the image is irrelevant, the voice becomes irrelevant, but, it can still be nice to have that connection, okay? So, of course, you have the bridging of the space, and then you have whatever you're going to do. Now, in terms of bringing, we could say, the energy, having an effect in that space, there's different ways to go about it. One would be to, of course, cultivate a very, very sincere relationship with both ends of that connection. And then, how you end up reticulating the energy from the space, the other space, into the other space, into whoever you might be working with in that other space. This is a lot different than trying to throw energy and attention, etc., through a device. Okay, so that's a little bit about that. The last one to discuss today is invisibility, right? And invisibility is, there's so many, we could say, like permutations of what invisibility can be. So the most, I suppose, advanced, we could say, would be right here, right now. I mean, off camera, like in person, if someone was to just disappear while you're looking at them. However, leading up to something like that, there's a lot of other ways in which invisibility can be trained and present. So again, BARDON has a bunch of different techniques to explore. Invisibility, or this reminds me of the Lord of the Rings scene where they're in that bar and the ring falls onto Frodo's finger and he disappears. And the ranger says he can avoid being seen if he wishes, but to disappear in front of a crowd of onlookers looking at you, that's quite the thing. So to avoid being seen or perceived is a different story. And there are different schools that will explore this type of thing quite a bit. Now, we want to be very cognizant of what type of subconscious habits we are developing when we are working certain skills, as well as what aspect of our own self is seeking those skills. So invisibility can be, another example would be, you can conduct yourself from an energetic standpoint in a certain way that it's very, very difficult for people to attach or pin their emotions onto you. Right? You can kind of disappear from that. And you can also, if you're doing a lot of Akashic work, for example, the visual space starts to get confusing because you are working a lot spacelessly. So when you look at somebody, or when someone looks at you and you've been doing a lot of Akasha, maybe it's in like a class setting. If I'm doing a class and we're working a lot of Akasha, people will report when they look at me as the, we come back to our bodies, so to speak, and the eyes flick on, is like, oh, like you look like you're here, but you're here, but you're here, but you're here, and like your head shrinks and it grows and it shrinks and it grows and it shifts, and it's so it can confuse and obfuscate the perceptions, and the energy can be very, very good at obfuscating perception. So of course, you have, like we said, the ability for emotions not to stick onto you, other people's, right? For other people's attention to kind of slide through you. Oops. Oh, I hope I haven't been hitting that. For other people's attention to kind of slide through you, or, roll around you. And this can be done in different ways, right? So you can pressurize the gaze or the emotions or the mind perception of somebody through obstinance, right? Through creating like just an obstinate barrier or pushing against it, right? You can also open yourself and allow something to pass, allow the gaze to pass through. You can do the same with your own sense of, say, visual touch or auditory speaking touch or whatever, where when you look at somebody, you don't pressurize them with meaning, right? You don't pressurize them with meaning. And that in and of itself can be profoundly healing for people when you look at somebody with no imposition whatsoever. So there's different ways of exploring what invisibility can be as you become more and more aware of your own mind and awareness, perceptions, your own emotional workings and energetic workings. What you'll start to notice is that attention has weight, right? There's a weight to attention. And there is, of course, a type of tension in attention, a type of tension in being perceived and perceiving. And there are times, of course, you would have noticed in meditation, where you think you're paying attention and then you don't even realize it, but your mind's wandering, or your mental landscape is doing something weird, or just there's distraction and you're not paying attention. And so people can learn to move in those spaces of distraction, of non-attention. And as you become more familiar with your own attention and distraction and concentration and focus and where your own blind spots are, you can start to move or speak into the blind spots that you might perceive in the world around you. So this is another type of, we could say, invisibility. To not really be seen. There are psychological habits, certain types of individuals and clothing and ways of presenting oneself that sort of slip, under the radar. And there's ways of presenting yourself that are, hey, look at me. So, as I mentioned, we want to be very, very aware of why we might want to develop certain skills, and also the subconscious habits that are being developed. If you have, say, if you're into like ninjutsu or, scout stuff, and from a nature standpoint, you might hold in high esteem the ability to move through the environment around you without being noticed, right? Or hell, maybe you're a spy into espionage, doing your Jason Bourne thing. So if that's something that you want to develop, cool, you develop it. However, what habits are you building into your mental patterning, to your mental body, to your astral patterning, to your energetic functions and patterns? And what happens when you want to be seen? Are you able to flip that switch and change, have the flexibility from an energetic, emotional, psychological, mental energy standpoint, all of it, perceptual standpoint, to shift and change your being to become a beacon of light that draws attention, as opposed to some other type of light or substance that dissolves attention away from it, either reflecting, passing it through, how can we put it, like mimicking or mirroring in a way that is dissolves into the comfort of that particular attention. So there's so many ways of exploring that. But the point that I want to make here is, if you don't have that flexibility to shift and change, that's not so good, right? Especially when it comes to invisibility and self-image issues that people can develop. A lot of folks who get into that and have a lot of pride in that, that pride, it's so funny, that pride becomes a point of a visibility itself that's really gets in the way of the disappearing stuff. Because when someone is, it's like when someone's, they've just read a book on like how to communicate with people, and they're like trying it out, and when you feel that conversation from the other end, you're like, ugh, gross, right? You can feel the dishonesty in it. You can feel the trying to do things, and that can be really off-putting, and also in direct contrast to actually, moving with that flow in a way that might be, absent of the possibility for attention to find it. Now, there are things that are very interesting here. So when it comes to attention, if you are able to slip out of someone's habitual attention and sort of start moving in those depth spaces, someone who is of equal skill in awareness as you will be able to see you, right? And this applies from like an just a raw energetic standpoint as well. When you get into this stuff, people want to start playing with their energy skills. And so everything around them becomes, and everyone becomes sort of a toy, we could say, of, you know, for their energetic expression or whatever, so they can practice their stuff. And this is a bit of an issue. Why? Well, it's kind of like if you went to a boxing gym, you like learn how to punch and, you know, do your stuff, and you walked up to random people without them knowing anything, like, and just walked up to them and punched them in the face. Oh, I'm practicing. Oh, like, you know, boom, liver shot. Oh, I'm just practicing. You know, it's okay. And you can justify that to yourself. That's pretty weird. So we want to be very, very clear that with all this stuff that you've really developed a strong character, goodwill, and ethics within that. That goodwill's so important. And then working on yourself, right? Working with yourself, as opposed to trying to do things at other people. Again, the boxing metaphor, or, you know, you get into jiu-jitsu and you just like go up to someone on the bus and choke them out, rear naked choke from behind, wouldn't fly. So when you start getting into energetic skills, because a lot of people don't have the awareness to perceive it, it flies under the radar. And so in a sense, you're working invisibly, right? Now, if someone's done some work, they can start to feel that. They'll feel when, you know, your mind is doing one thing when you're trying to play around with that energy. And if they are good, then what happens is, you know, your stuff doesn't work. The same as if, you know, good boxer or whatever, you know, they'll get you. So we want to look at awareness, observation, the actual energetic stuff of what's going on. What are you doing energetically? And if invisibility is the thing that you want to work on, what is it that is noticed? What is it that makes something perceivable, perceptible? And the more deeply you really explore your own perceptions, your own mental reticulation with perception, your own emotional reticulation with perception, the going even further back, stimulus to perception, and that whole cascade of events that takes place within that, that's where the lessons of invisibility can really shoot off. Instead of just trying to work the skill set of invisibility, you can actually use it as a platform from which to explore the ins and outs of yourself to very, very high degrees. And you can actually ride that platform to some pretty interesting spiritual heights as well, right? Because attention, identity, pressurization, this stuff is, you know, that stuff's there. Expansiveness, the akasha, how that's working, where you're moving, right, from, where you are seeing from, where you're perceiving from. This is all part of this. So that's identity, right? Layer after layer after layer as everything starts to dissolve. So I think we'll call this one here. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you're interested in training, please check out the online courses in Tai Chi, and we have one in Qi Gong, Hermetic, Alchemy, and Meditation. And that one also has a video Q&A reference library. So you're welcome to check that out. I also offer private training online. These are 2-hour private lessons, so you can contact me if you're interested in that. And I'm running over the idea of maybe next year doing a silent meditation retreat, or teaching one. Maybe like 2 weeks of preparation and, you know, energetic training and mind training and meditation training. And then maybe the second 2 weeks silent. It would be, you know, a full-time 1 month. So I don't know if that's the kind of thing people are interested in. It'd be fun for me to teach something like that. So let me know if that's something that might pique your interest. And I think that's everything. Thanks for watching. Bye.